We got audio? Hello. How is everyone? Welcome to the XR Impact Track. Way. My name is Daniel Dubosky-Bryant. I'm the Executive Director of the Virtual World Society. I'm your host for the XR Impact Track today. How's everybody doing? You okay in the front here? Enjoying the show so far? Now, I have a question for you. Has anybody found the Metaverse? I've been looking everywhere. People are telling me it's amazing, but I have no idea where it is. So if you find it, where is it? In my pocket. I'll check there later. Thank you very much. So, XR Impact. Like Ori, Imbar, and the AWE team, we at the Virtual World Society believe that impact is a foundational concept for this industry, which is why this year the XR Impact Track is represented at selected sessions across all different conference tracks. Just before we get started with this session, a quick word about impact. XR technologies are becoming more and more impactful, but of course, impact is a double-edged sword. So as we race into the future, we have to remember to build the way we want to experience it. We have to make sure that firstly, we do no harm, and secondly, we bring out the best in humanity because technology is there to make our lives better. And humanity is diverse. So now, we're going to hear about an initiative called DVRSTY, Accelerating Founders for a More Diverse World. Please welcome to the stage, Dave Haynes. All right, Dave. Looking forward to this one. Excellent. Thank you.
Woo! Yay. All right.
All right. Okay, thank you. First of all, thanks to everyone for coming along. I think, it's great that AWE is really kind of putting some of these sessions in and in the bigger rooms and really getting the attention. We're also being live streamed, so, hello to everybody watching along on the live stream or watching this in the future. So let's get started. To introduce myself, I'm Dave Haynes. I'm the founding partner at FOV Ventures. FOV Ventures is a European-focused early-stage fund that invests exclusively in founders that are building the metaverse, or as MUKI would say, the M word. And we invest up to $500,000 in companies at pre-seed and seed. So if you are a startup and you're looking for funding, then come and say hi. But I think for us, diversity is a really important topic. I think two things. First of all, it's a really important topic for venture as a whole. So not just this industry, but for venture capital. Where is the money going and who's that going to build the next generation of companies? But second of all, it's really crucial to kind of explore this topic in the context of XR and the metaverse. Because if, like me, you think that really we are building together the next generation of the internet and the next generation of the way we actually do computing, we actually have a chance now to build it from the ground up. And I think it's really important that maybe the generation that is building Web3 and the metaverse isn't necessarily the same in terms of diversity as the people that built Web 2. So that's why we as a fund take this topic very importantly. And I guess the background of that is we noticed as well as a fund, we get pitched by hundreds of companies every month. We weren't seeing, or we hadn't actually made any investments from the fund into female founders. Diverse in other ways, but not with female-led companies. So we put on an initiative called DVRSTY that we teamed up with some other funds, and we had Asha, who was kind of instrumental in helping there as well, to actually put out a call specifically for female founders who were building in this space. So I think for me, that really got my kind of mind on this topic. So I'm asking the questions, but I've brought on three people who know way more about this and are doing their own things in this space and in this topic. So I want you guys just to introduce yourself, and then we'll get into the questions. So,
hey, Dave, thanks for having us, and thank you, Sonia and the whole team at AWE. It's so great to be back in person and, again, meeting new people and hugging some long-lost reunion friends, too. My name is Kulhan. I'm a Chief Innovation Officer and an Executive XR MetaTech producer and creative technologist of my own company, which is called MUKI-INTERNATIONal. My background and spine is in media and entertainment, broadcasting, the music industry, and sport. And I primarily am focusing on working on very large-scale end-to-end projects, looking at new and emerging technologies. How are we creating space spaces in a world and experiences for fans to enjoy themselves and be interactive, while in parallel working very closely with IBC, which is the big international broadcasting convention around living R&D and accelerators in innovation. I sit on a lot of diversity and inclusion committees, namely work very closely with Asha as well, and Immerse UK, part of the Women in Immersive Technologies, which Alexandra is going to talk about, and have seen this space change and grow, which we're going to talk about in a second. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you, Muki. Alexandra.
Alexandra Hussenot, I'm the CEO and founder of Immersionn. We are, after our third pivot, the last time I was at AAW, we were a news company in the immersive space. Now we are a publisher of metaverses, the M word. In parallel of Immersionn, I am also leading the Women in Immersive Technology team in the UK. The idea is to really bring women together, mostly in London, sadly, because in the physical space, at least, we try to know each other physically and try to foster interest, newcomers into the industry. And also, we've got quite a close group, I have to say, in London, of female entrepreneurs and freelancers that are really thought leaders in that industry, and it's just fantastic to get to know each other and drive the business further. Outside of that, I'm also part of the creative working group for the creative industries of UK 5G. My background is in the telecommunication industry and tech. Worked for Ericsson, Sony Mobile. And so what I really loved about Women in Immersive Technologies, which is now a 3,000 group big in Europe, is that the idea when VR started, immersive tech started, was that this is a new industry and this is a chance to bring diversity from the start. In the telco, where I come from, in tech, you know, it's been, when I started 25 years ago, it was just men everywhere. So it's been quite amazing to see how that kind of vision is coming through every year a little bit more. And we see that at AAW as well.
Great, thanks. Asha?
Cool. Hi, everyone. I'm Asha Easton, and I'm the lead for Immerse UK at Innovate UK KTN, based out of London. We're the UK government's innovation network for immersive technology professionals. So we work to help grow the immersive tech ecosystem and make it less fragmented across the country. We connect companies, academics, and the government to help do that. And the work that we do is primarily around like helping UK immersive businesses to grow, helping help them to expand internationally, and then the work we do with the community feeds back into government to help determine policy for the industry, where they go with research and development grant funding for the sector. So we have our hand in many different pies in the immersive economy, and we have done many initiatives over the years around helping women in the space, including this year we actually had 7 women from the Women Innovators Program for the UK that there were 50 selected, 7 of them were immersive businesses. We've welcomed them into the immersive tech, the Immerse UK community, and helping them to grow. So there's lots of different initiatives there, but on the side of that, I also helped to co-found something called the XR Diversity Initiative, which was founded years ago to help to upskill people from diverse backgrounds with immersive tech skills to help them get their foot in the door into the industry. And it was really about actually doing hands-on workshops, getting people to build rapid prototypes in a day, just let them experiment with the different areas and pathways into the sector. So it's very, very beginning stages of, how do you start a career in this space. And then I was also one of the original members of WIT. And I think actually the first London meeting for WIT was just me and Alex, actually, in London. So I've been on that journey since the beginning as well, which has been really fun. And then I've been on the board of FOV Ventures to help with their diversity initiatives that they've mentioned before.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, Asha. Maybe I have some stats that I want to kind of set the scene with, but also to set the scene, I guess one question that I had when thinking about this is what should we actually, when we're talking about diversity, I think there's many different strands of diversity. We're just going to zoom in on one of them, but maybe I could kind of open it up to you. When you think about diversity, what are the different things, and is there a relative importance, or are they all kind of important? So yeah, maybe talk me whether that's gender diversity or race diversity. Muki, do you have any views on that?
100%. I think it's a word that's, almost needs to have the right clarification and representation around it.
Like the metaverse.
Yes, that's a drink on you. But seriously, we have seen the industry kind of grow and ebb and shift. And when I say our industry, in this XR world, technology industry, media, entertainment, to me personally, when I see the word diversity and I want to walk into a room and see everyone and not just one gender or one race or one group of people from just one background. So to me, it's showing a good representation of a variation of sectors and cultures. And really, that helps with great dynamics of a good team and balancing your team out the right way. And that helps with when you are especially running a company or running several projects or several teams, what that looks like. And I think when you walk into a room and it's lacking that diversity, then it is an uncomfortable feeling. And people are now a lot quicker to call it out, which is good. And then I think it's the same, you guys have probably seen it as well, right?
Yeah, I think when it lacks diversity, everybody agrees, which is boring. So when I think of diversity, I like to think also in an organization that is diverse from the top and all the way down, including the board, ideally, because in the end, decisions are made quite high up in a company. So if you are very diverse in your employee base, but the decisions are all made by a bunch of guys, sorry to say that, it's going to lack the diversity of decision and vision from the top, as simple as that. And sometimes there is one odd woman maybe at the board, that must be a very difficult position to have as well. I've just met someone actually yesterday who was working for a really cool tech company, and she's the first female in the management team. And I thought, well, that's going to be tough.
Yeah, well, actually, honestly, just creating the application form for XRDI made us question, wait, we're saying XR Diversity Initiative, not XR Upskilling Just Women for the Sector Initiative, even though it started, It's like, let's get more women in. But it drove a bigger conversation. We said, oh, well, actually, we ended up putting tons of different categories, like physical disability, are you an older person, our part of the USP of what we do is getting people access to kit that is expensive often and they can't usually get their hands on. So we put, socioeconomic and as many as we could think of to be as inclusive as possible, and then we actually put other as a category too. Let us know if you feel like, you don't have representation in the space, and why you would like to join, basically.
And you rattled off like accessibility things as well too. So thinking around, sight impaired, hearing impaired, movement impaired. Yeah. That comes into some exclusivity, but that still can create a diverse environment and a diverse team.
Yeah. So we had an older white man join who was in a wheelchair, and he came to learn how to, I think in the end, he ended up wanting to use Unity to custom build like prototypes of wheelchairs. And so, we ended up having a really wide range of people joining that project. It also makes it extra complicated to set up because teaching the different workshops and stuff and making them accessible for all as well, it adds extra layers of challenges. But
makes sense. Yeah, I think from my perspective as a fund, I think it's sometimes, there's lots of positive reasons to bring diversity in, there's just, having a fairer society or giving people equal opportunity and accessibility. But actually, I think the interesting thing is there is, more than just that. Like for our mind, it's like if we have a diverse portfolio of companies, we're making investments into 25 companies, like we want those companies to be addressing a diverse set of opportunities, right? If you're just backing people from one background, they're probably only congregating around the same set of problems, where actually if you can find diverse founders, they will find a completely new set of opportunities, or they'll have different perspectives on how to solve them. So yes, there is, I think as an industry, we need to do better just because it's fairer and more kind of, equal. But actually, I think it should hopefully drive performance. And the same in a company. Hopefully, if you have a more diverse board or you have a more diverse leadership team, then actually you can be looking at more aspects of your company, and that leads to better performance. So, okay, so just for the clarity, I think what we're going to do, because we could maybe have 4 panels about this topic topic, and also if we talk about inclusion, we're really just going to zoom in on gender diversity just for this, but we know there's lots of other topics to get on. So just a few stats, and you know, I've been spending the last kind of weeks and months looking at some of these numbers, and I think when you do that exercise, it really starts to kind of, you know, kind of focus your mind on some of the challenges. I mean, first of all, just from my industry, from venture, if you look at all of the venture capital dollars that have been invested into companies since 2017, only 1.3% of those dollars have gone to female-led companies or companies with at least one female, which is kind of crazy. 1.3%, that just doesn't seem like the right number. I think I've been looking at the stats and following it like closer to today. I think that number is now increasing, but I think that was a wake-up call for everybody in those moments, and the industry is now like, you know, we can't fix this overnight, but to go from a base of 1.3%, we just you know, have to do better. Then if we kind of drill down into this industry, Asha and I looked at some stats that was just for VR and AR companies in the UK. So, you know, that's not everyone in the XR industry, but just to give you a sample, of 623 companies that we could find data for, 88% of them had at least one female founder. So that number takes you up from 1.3% to 14%. Again, I was actually kind of pleasantly surprised about the 14%. Still feels like a relatively low number, especially if you look at the good news is, I think, look at AWE, they have, I think it's 50% of all speakers here. So 92 speakers at AWE are female speakers. So I think we have the leadership. My question would be...
That's like round of applause.
Yeah, so I mean, well done on AWE and on Sonia and Ori for curating that. But it seems to me like if that's the representation in the industry, we should be doing better than 13% in terms of actually female-founded companies. But Asha, you wanted to jump in on that.
On that particular stat? Well, I was just going to say, I think you said 88%, but it was 88 companies that...
88 companies.
Yeah, 88 companies.
Thank you for the correction. So yeah, and then if we look at, okay, well, what can we do to address this? I think one thing is just having more, you know, female investors to start with, because they're going to be looking for those opportunities. Very conscious that FOV Ventures, we have two, you know, white male partners, but I think, again, as an industry as a whole, you know, this is now that the numbers are increasing. But again, only 14% of angel investors in the UK are female. So again, those numbers I think can improve, and there are a lot of kind of venture capital specific initiatives like improving that. I think again, if you look at this industry specifically, the great thing is, I mean, we have had for a while, there's a great fund in the US that's been going around called WXR. They've backed some great companies. So we've already had specific initiatives here, and I think that's helping. So yeah, those are the numbers. I mean, it's good that people are now tracking that. When we started the fund, we weren't tracking that as a stat. Now, actually, it's kind of, you know, that is one of the first things we do. When we log a company that we see, we're putting that data in, because we actually want to be able to measure. And I think the things that you measure are the things that you pay attention to. So right, those are the stats. Let's talk about, why is this actually important? Like, okay, we've acknowledged that there's this thing, but why is it important? And then we'll get on to what we should be doing about it.
So why is it important to have more female founders and females on your boards? And
does it actually matter? What does it lead to, et cetera?
You know what, I think that goes back to the balance issue and the word diversity. And if you have a room of all one gender, it's unbalanced. And the second you start to bring in a variation of personality types and a variation of knowledge and you know, skill sets, then you'll start to create those balances. You know, you like anything in any business, you want to make sure, like I'm sure you as an investor completely appreciate this, you know, you want to make sure that it's the right thing with the right leadership. So it's about having those leadership skills, but I think it's really businesses and larger companies and, you know, in our FANG acronyms are finally doing something about it, and they are looking to even smaller companies. Like if somebody is female-led, they'll start to like look for that first, look for the success, and then start to find out where that can be nurtured and develop more female founders. But I think in a nutshell, why is it important? It is about creating that right dynamic and the right balance. And I think like right here on stage, we've got a good, you know, although gender-wise, it's, you know, token male, not token male, you know, like that's per se, but it's more it would be different if it was 4 females talking about this, and that's where it's quite nice. You can even hear it in our voices talking to you right now, too. Yeah. But yeah, I hope that answers that question.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
Yeah, I was actually invited to a dinner the other day because they needed better male diversity in
They needed
group.
a male. Oh,
there we go.
How was that for you?
Yeah.
Oh, good. Yeah.
Alexandra, anything to add to that or build on that at all?
We have a great diversity in my company. We have 50% from the top down. However, our customers, they perceive that they call us the Metaverse ladies. That's quite interesting to me.
Is that a T-shirt? Do you have a T-shirt?
Yeah, we should make one, right? Metaverse ladies. But there is 50% guys. They are everywhere, and we are a great team. So I think this is a very interesting that we are, by just being balanced, we are twisting the perception of our clients. They think that we are female-led, which shows how much route or journey there is still to go to. I heads up to my team, if you are watching or later on, I think the females in my company, I can speak for them, they are killers at delivering, like execution. I think there is an interesting aspect of style between male and female sometimes. So there is the man state, there is the skills, and then there is the approach. And I don't know if I'm doing something that I'm recruiting all the same type, which would be bad. But the female in my company in many different roles tend to be very on it, like delivering. And the guys are a bit more relaxed, which is also very important because we need to cool down sometime and take the time to think and maybe make a decision in a few days. So that's just live example of why this is important.
That sounds like a hormone balance then.
Maybe. It depends on the day, yeah.
But Asha, if we kind of drill down into the importance, I think there's one thing, just the general importance, but if we look at XR and the industry that we're in, is there any kind of extra reasons or kind of industry-specific reasons why you think it might matter?
For me, the most important reason is about inspiring the next generation and young people from a very young age to even understand where the next opportunities are coming from and where they're going to be. And I think, young girls seeing women in positions of leadership in this space or female founders going on to succeed, I think that's what we need. And then we need to be able to create, the pipeline to get them in the door, first of all, and then nurture to the different stages to either get a job in the industry or go the founder route. And those, there's similar tracks, but then they diverge at some point, and making sure they understand where the resources are, making sure that they can see themselves in those positions. For me, that's why it's important that we do that work now, so it just becomes inherent.
Yeah. And I guess there is a bit of kind of trickle down as well, like all of the other things, think about the gender pay gap, and if there's female leaders, they adjust a lot of those different things, or bringing in more diversity and inclusion training. Actually, I think I have to call out a couple of companies, but companies like Body Swaps that actually deliver diversity and inclusion training in a VR headset. They're probably more likely to be, that's a solution maybe that we need.
I want to call one thing out because I got an email in my inbox just literally a couple of hours ago.
Which is hot off the press.
Hot off the press, which I found really interesting. And it made me think about accountability for those kinds of things. So it was actually a mailing from, Web Summit. It's a big community. We know it's cross-sector tech and, big audience. It was actually 79% of respondents are from Europe, so it's European slant to it. But it was surveying women in tech just generally about how they feel about working in the industry, et cetera, et cetera. And 84% said that the company they worked in had 89 initiatives and were very passionate about it, et cetera, et cetera. But then their responses about how they actually felt and how they were actually treated was that 50% had experienced harassment in the last year. 70% still were not nearly paid equally. 70% felt like they had to, choose between family and career. So the feelings of how they actually felt they were treated and what was actually happening is not consistent with the level to which these days we see ED&I programs and stuff like that. So it makes me go, oh, well, how much of it is just for the surface level? How do we make sure that what's happening is tangible and we're tracking it and being accountable for it?
And you don't want it to be contradictory either.
Yeah.
So we were talking about this backstage. Is if you're that goes with even when you are starting a company and startups, and a lot of people I hire even in the projects that I've got, and it's so impressive when you do see a company have an initiative, they meet the initiative, but then they follow through on it.
Yeah.
And so with even a startup or any company, they're actually putting in codes of conduct and sticking by that. So people don't feel so afraid to raise something if say someone's touched their bum by the coffee bar or something, or someone's written something bad to them. But I think it's important if a company's going to raise an initiative, they put their money to their mouth, is literally, and follow through on it and show that, because you would hate to have that great forward movement in the company on paper, and you have some great headlines, and then go behind the closed door, lift under the hood, and you're surveyed with a huge percentage of females saying something really horrible's happened.
Yeah.
Like, how do you balance that out?
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, yeah, I was
Sorry.
also going to say, I think we also, if we go industry specific as well, we've talked about all the initiatives that we've set up or been part of, and things have grown over the years, but, a lot of these initiatives are, they're grassroots, they're volunteer led, like they're not, or they get partial funding, one-time big sponsorship from someone, and at the end of the day, we are all very busy in the industry. We also all have full-time jobs, and so the outcome capture from what comes out of these programs, I think, often doesn't exist because it's just no time. And having like proper support that enables these programs to have like longevity and the ability to track, and that, I think that's really important.
Almost like somebody coming in to check up on them. Like if you want to rescue a dog at Battersea Dogs Home in London, you get interviewed first. And then they give you the animal, then they might come back check in 2 weeks' time just to make sure how everything is.
I mean, to give some examples of that, I mean, as a fund, we have to raise money from investors and LPs. And it's actually quite interesting because now in the venture industry, those LPs, especially the more institutional ones, they are enforcing that. So we actually, as a fund, every year we have to report on our environmental, social, and governance. So it's like we are submitting a number and we're polling our companies. So that trickles down. We're being asked. That means we're asking the companies. They're needing to provide a number, and that actually helps that accountability. But just to come to maybe the diversity in the metaverse side of things, one thing, and there is a really great shout out, you should Google it after this session. There's a brilliant report by Anne from, who's the founder of a company called Wristband, and she did a whole report.
She's here somewhere too.
Yes, well, shouts out to that. She did a whole report specifically on how diversity is or isn't manifesting itself in the metaverse that we're building at the moment. And actually, if I think about some of the virtual spaces that I go into, they're very kind of neon, or there's kind of like muscly ripped guys, or like cute anime chicks running around. And
then you left the room, Dave.
And then I left the room. And it feels like, this topic is very visceral when we're building out this kind of third place for people to spend time in. Like, we want that to kind of, feel like the real world that we want to inhabit, and we want the real world to, we want the virtual world to be as diverse as the real world. So I would definitely recommend going and seeing that thing, and just thinking about when you're designing your own products, like most of you are probably building things, just thinking about that as a thing. There is one company, I think they're called Someplace in Australia, and hearing them, they're like, why does the metaverse have to be all neon lights and kind of shine? Like, why can't we have some light in here? Why can't it be nice? Why can't we have some like flowers on our virtual kind of, and it's like getting those types of things is just, I think that's just good for business and just good for the way that we're kind of building these new environments.
Yeah, and also creating safe spaces. We go into these worlds to also escape a physical real world that we've been growing up in, but you also want to make sure you go in there and you don't think you're going to get harassed by somebody, or you want to feel like that it's a nice environment. And I kind of think accessibility does loop back into that. So if you were colorblind, how would that world look? I think this goes to the general aesthetics of interaction design and UX design and UI design, and that's where I'm seeing a big change in that too. Sorry. Yeah.
Talking about companies that have made great initiatives and start to put a stick in the ground, I have to make a shout out to Meta, who has been supporting and been a sponsor of Women in Immersive Tech this year, last year. So they have really started, and hopefully they will follow through. The programs are amazing. They've been led by Joanna Mattei and Lynn Seegers, the founders of Women in Immersive Tech. A few other women, Lisa Vogel, I think was quite involved, the programs, just to name a few of what has been done with the sponsorship. A program called Immersive Creator Catalyst. I think on that one there was 53 applications from various film producers, female, and in the end 4 projects were funded and were then delivered as immersive film productions. There is the Metaverse Creation Lab and the Young Badass Lab, which I believe were focused on younger audience, so more like teenager female that were interested already to get into the metaverse. And so essentially the projects was to create your avatar, your identity in the metaverse, which I suspect was also very insightful for Meta to tackle the topic of identity and diversity of that identity in the metaverse. So yeah, I just had to do that, and hopefully a lot more companies in the space can do that because the ecosystem still needs it. We're still building it, and although we have many female already, we need more.
I guess that's a great example of accountability for a very large company. You know, I suppose the FANGs are now MANGs. Yes. If everyone knows what I'm talking about. So the FANG is like the Facebook, Apple, Google, you know, et cetera, Amazon, et cetera, et cetera. But that's like, we've been talking about kind of like maybe smaller companies and SMEs making those initiatives, but it is kind of nice when you see that followed through of a very large company putting their money where their mouth is.
And you can see that has manifested in product designs. I think at the Meta Connect they announced the expansion of their avatar system.
It's like last week, wasn't it, or something? Yeah.
So let's maybe go into that a bit deeper. So we've acknowledged that there's a problem, and I think it's very easy just to talk about these things, but ultimately we want this talking to leading to action. So Asha, are there any, and let's maybe come to some of the bad things or things we shouldn't do, but first of all, what are some of the positive, tangible things, programs that you've seen run, or things that you feel are making a difference at the moment?
Yeah, well, I mean, I got to shout out the one thing that's not necessarily women specific, because you just talked about inclusion.
Yeah.
Yesterday we ran the first Immerse UK Summit, and our first track was all around ED&I, and the main thing that we were showcasing was a program that happened in the UK that was run by Story Futures Academy and in-game up at University of Abertay in partnership with XR Access and an organization called XR Inclusion, and they basically brought in XR developers and producers to help them to use a framework and actually an inclusive design canvas they've created to try and help them with applying it to their production processes and putting it into their workflows, and talking about how that worked and presenting that tool. So just in terms of something concrete coming out.
They're very interested in that.
Yeah, and so I think that's something that's really successful. It's come up with a concrete tool that people can actually start using to change how they work. Other things that I've seen work. Well, hang on. Well, I mean, I got to shout out Nina Solomons, who's my co-founder of XRDI. And
that's why we're here on stage to give the shout out.
Yeah, and it was originally VRDI. So anyway, we were chatting yesterday about this, and this goes back to never having time to follow up and find out what actually happened from all this stuff. We ran into someone who was at Immerse Summit who was actually in one of the original XRDIs, and now she's a founder. And then I just did a little digging, and there's actually 7 women that went on to be founders just from coming to do a workshop. And then there's another several that have gone on to senior level positions in the industry that aren't founders but still doing pretty significant work. So I mean, and that's just a tiny thing we do. That's a day workshop just to come in and, as I say, come in and rough and ready prototype something with an instructor. So I think giving people that opportunity, giving people access to mentorship and leaders in the industry who can just give them an idea of where they can go is really beneficial. But then the follow-up behind that, I think, is what would make real change. And as we've mentioned all these different initiatives that have gone on. I think they all kind of are operating in different areas of like a pipeline that I imagine of where all the different help needs to happen. So you have to get people's foot in the door. You have to help them on the mentorship journey of like picking a path. You have to, follow that up with business support and that kind of coaching if they want to become a founder. Then you need a pipeline for funding, et cetera, and on and on. So there's so many like areas of the pipeline that need to be worked on. And for me, I think we had this with diversity, right? With the office hours. When we set up the office hour idea, to be fair, the first one was run in the summer, so we were like, it was all quite quickly done. So we were like, let's just test the waters and see how many applications we get. And then we had a bit of promo, but not probably as much promo. But I expected more applications actually, and we only got so many. And then we went, well, we all, everyone who's involved in that has like a very deep network. So we really thought we would push it, we'd get more. And I was like, where are all the female founders actually? Like, are there just not as many as we think there were? So then that went to a question of, okay, well then how do we inspire the next generation of founders? And for me, it all like goes back to like the earliest point of education. And so that's kind of where I'd like to see more focus.
And you guys also do an amazing job also with funding and the money and like getting some initial, when you're starting a business, it's a lot of labor of love, isn't it? And as long as someone's got some padding, it's good. I
got to shout out again, like I mentioned briefly, the Women Innovators Program and the Young Innovators Programs, which are both run by Innovate UK. The Women Innovators Program is grant funding for female founders up to it's $50K. Straight up, and for the young innovators, it's $5K straight up to help build. You can do whatever you want with it. Actually, it's just to build your MVP, do what you got to do. Grant funding in the UK, there's a lot of other. Usually, when you get grant funding, it's up to 70% of your total project cost, and then you have to bring the other 30% to the table, and that's exclusionary actually, especially if you're a one-man band. Bringing that money is not necessarily possible.
Or one-woman band.
Or one-woman band. Oh my gosh, see, it's like even the vocabulary, it's even ingrained in our minds. So anyway, I mentioned earlier the Women Innovators Program. There was 50 women chosen. I went through all of them to see if there were any immersive ladies in there. There was about 7. And that is amazing. One of the, it's actually, Nina ended up being one of them. And she's gone on to build her MVP and her prototype, and her business is going, and she's, like killing it. But I think there needs to be more things like that that are kind of permanently accessible at that level to encourage people in.
So
anyway, sorry, I could ramble on.
So just quickly at this point, I just want to invite, so we do have 2 mics up front. I'm going to ask one more question, but I'd love for you guys to ask us some questions. So have a think about those, and when you do have questions, just come up and kind of
I see. They're
take
like
one of the mics.
Little duet mics.
Oh yeah, come on up.
We have duet mics.
Oh, you got to wave.
So do come up. In the meantime, just one last question for you guys before we go over to these. What are the things that aren't helping? There are a lot of things. Are there some initiatives that are just like, that's more talking, or this one's
Where do we
less
start
effective?
with that, Dave?
Maybe let's be quick on that. But
unconscious bias and conscious bias.
I hope it's okay to be honest. I think office hours,
That's right.
there are many of them, usually by big brands.
You mean the expectation of how much you work a week?
No, the office hours, sorry. No, I mean the female office hours, the
Okay.
generosity of giving advice to female over a phone call.
Yeah.
The investment and the commitment doesn't feel like, why should I get into a call? I have so many great advisors. I have accelerators being offered, which are real structured program, etc. So I want advice from people who have skin in the game. And I think it probably doesn't work also because a lot of people are offering it right now, and you don't really know what you're going to get.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Fair enough. Yeah, I mean, as one of our initiatives was to do the office hours, I guess the thinking there as well is a lot of, to be a founder, like a lot of it is just building networks to get the things you need. True. And that might be networks to get investors, but it might be networks to find first hires. So I think the goal of the office hours that we did was really to make those connections in an environment where there wasn't an expectation of, oh, we're going to pitch these investors, but just to make those.
Yeah.
And I was really pleased with the results. I actually, we had 40 people that applied to the office hours, and that put, that probably, that was the same amount of female founders that we'd seen over the last 3 or 4 months. We saw coming through that. So actually, it really helped to raise our field of view, pun intended, on what was there. But yeah, I think you're right. There's good ways of doing it, and then there's bad ways.
Exactly. You don't know where you're going to get.
And I think at the end of the day, it's like there's only so much mentorship you can give. At some point, show me the money, right? So, right. Let's go to some questions. I think we had one in the front here. Go ahead. If you could just introduce yourself and then ask the question. Oh, can we have the mics on, please?
Check
Sound. Go ahead.
But it'd be good, yeah.
I'll repeat the question if the mics aren't on.
Okay, so I will introduce myself. It's a long introduction, but it gets to the point of the question. Okay, so if it's okay, I will extend it a bit. So my name is Gabriela Gaps Chihan Stanley. I am the founder and creative director of an immersive entertainment studio in Vienna, Austria. I'm also the founder of the XR community, XR Vienna in Austria, naturally. And I'm also the Austrian ambassador of Women in Immersive Tech.
Yes.
Yay.
And besides that, I'm also
Just quickly try the mic now. Sorry, I'm just conscious that they might have turned it up. No? Sound guys at the back, could we get the microphone on at the front? Sorry to interrupt. Carry on. And
We
let's
need
see
to
if
hear you,
they-
Gabs.
Yeah.
You got good stuff to talk to us about.
Yeah, all right.
That's all right.
Yeah, go ahead. No.
So Gabs from Verse lives in Vienna. She's got her own company. She's also the initiator of XR in Vienna, XR Vienna, Women in XR, and the ambassador for Women in Immersive Tech Vienna. That's it.
And this is an important part. Like, my company is an award-winning company. I was the first one to actually found an XR community, and I was also the first Austrian ambassador of Women in Immersive Tech. All being a mother, also being a person with a mental disorder, and also being someone that doesn't live in her own country of origin.
Maybe just pause so Muki can repeat what you
Dave,
just
yeah.
said.
Yeah.
I have a point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great.
So for me, when I hear about gender equality or equality of opportunities, the first thing that comes to mind.
Oh yeah. Gabs, run
That
over
one's
that
working.
one.
Well
Go.
done.
What
Gabs,
a
ladies and
you.
gentlemen, she did the best.
Thank you. I don't know if I should slide again. Like it's
Thank
just too
you.
much.
No, carry on from where you were.
Okay, so as I was saying, like besides, I say this
Thank
with
you.
all due honesty, not that. I mean, I have an award-winning company. I have a thriving community, and I'm also a proud member of international communities such as Women in Immersive Tech as an Austrian ambassador, and I did all this by like while being a mother, an entrepreneur. It's a complicated word for me because I speak Spanish and I'm a bit nervous, and also with a mental disorder, no? And also being in a country that is not my own because I'm from South America. I live in a place that is completely different than what I was raised. So for me, when I hear talks about gender equality or equality of opportunities, I mean, the first thing that comes to mind, I mean, some of you were already talking about this, is our definition of performance, no? Mm-hmm. What does performance mean? And this is something that I don't need to be empowered, you know? I don't need to have more opportunities, you know? But I do need to understand what are the standards of performance that the mainstream business world is searching for, you know? Because I don't consider myself in a disadvantage because I know I can make it, but if the rules of the game are already tilted towards the benefit of a certain gender or a certain type of person, then there goes my question, you know? What is your view on how we can redefine performance in order to include everybody in the conversation?
That's an amazing question.
Wow.
Gabs. You're stuck with it. You're stuck with it, girl. I think there's a tipping point in the world, in our industry, where they might not be looking at, you know, in a general sense of performance of awards or something, accolades, or what you've done or how much you've raised from zero to whatever. And I really feel that there's, we're, as these kind of next generational things tip over, and people move on, and then next people are coming out being more mindful of your background or disability. Mental health and awareness is a massive, I think, a hugely massive priority on lots and lots of companies. And I feel in our industry, people will take those into consideration and be mindful and a little bit more respectful, I think. I mean, maybe that's something more for you to chip in on, Dave. I mean,
I would say with that, I mean, there is also, I think it's helpful to have these discussions. I mean, especially for me, where I haven't necessarily thought about this topic for the last 10 years, but now I'm thinking about it, then it's helpful for me, like when I'm being pitched by someone, to think about what my own unconscious biases might be. Like my conscious, hopefully in my conscious, I'm proactively thinking the other way, but sometimes there is an unconscious bias, or I think it's just natural when you're looking for people to fund or to back, you're kind of looking for people that kind of seem similar to you in the background, and that's a very unconscious thing. So that's one thing for me that I think these discussions can kind of bring forward.
Yeah.
But Asha, do you want to?
Yeah, I mean, we have been talking a lot about, our side of the table, like our women in our industry, but I think the education and this change also needs to happen in the VC space and in the investment community on a whole other level. I mean, I have seen, I gotta just say it, I gotta speak the truth. I have seen like 2 male teams that have raised several million first round on an idea only. Okay, and people that don't even have like the tech capability in the team yet, whereas I've seen female founders that have a working MVP, that have, all the capabilities, that are like, shortchanging themselves, saying, oh, I'm just looking to get 350,000 just to get me past it. And I go,
It's a great point.
You know what I mean?
Sometimes we kill ourselves.
Yeah, and so it's like, what are investors? How can they be more honest about what their criteria are?
Yeah.
What they look for instance. And the thing is that none of that's transparent, right? Like, funds have their own theses. They just,
but I think
it's So anyway, but we've seen it all the time, and I think that's something that's very frustrating.
I love to answer that question as well, because it was great, absolutely great. So there are 2 points that made me think about. I'm very competitive, and I think I would love to see the data that if we think of investors, but I think the question was general, was investors, it might be your bosses at work, it might be, versus the capital invested, and what did you make out of it? What came out of it? And maybe it's not just monetary, it can be more than monetary outputs. But ultimately, I'm quite convinced in our case that we are delivering a hell of a lot of a return, So I think this should be a transparent KPI, like it cannot lie, and it's financial, and it's... the other, I was thinking of the performance of the father of my kids. So the man at home. I've been very lucky. I married a Swede, and one of the reasons I liked Swedish men is because they are quite advanced and ahead in the...
Nordics unite.
in the equality part, and it's become true. So he's been sometimes more present than me, really, in the house and with the kids and everything, and that allows me to be performant in the work. So I think there is a measure of performance of your man at home could be interesting as well.
So it's the support from a workplace and the home environment too. But I think it's I think it's important.
I want to.
What I was going to say, sorry, but to your point around the investors, and just come to London, come to the city, come to the Square Mile, walk around Canary Wharf. You can feel the difference. You can absolutely feel the difference. But what I'd like to see from venture capitalists and investors, and I work with lots and lots of entrepreneurs and startups as well as gigantic, huge brands, and the startups that I like to go on advisory boards and help on, and I want to be that advisor that says, who are you looking at to invest in your company, And who are those people? Do they share the same ethos and values and ethics and morals? And what is their code of conduct? Because then ultimately they're going to represent your company somewhere down the line and be judged by a piece of paper.
Yeah. Well, also, I think we're living in a time where actually there is, there has been a lot more venture capital flow into this industry, and just in general, there's more funds. There's actually, despite the recent downturn, there is more dry powder to invest. And I think as a founder, if you can just feel empowered, like, us, the VCs have the ones that are the problem, like you're the, you can...
And you want to be proud of who you're working with.
Yeah, exactly. But some of the best founders that I've seen have been female founders who have had more kind of adverse backgrounds. And I think it's well known, like the numbers show, this isn't female or male, but like immigrant founders where you've had that kind of adversity and then you've got funding despite some of those things. Actually, that's a great indication of success. So hopefully that can lead into building very...
so I suppose that's less judgment and, believing in the product or believing in the idea too,
I'm conscious of time. I think we're up on time, but I'm not seeing any.
We have another question here?
I'm not seeing any timer on the screen. So if someone from AWE wants us to stop, come and tell us to stop.
There's
but
no
if not, let's
countdown
go
clock.
to this question here.
How much more time do we have, Rupert?
I think that one now works.
Oh, we're being told to stop.
Oh, wait, there was, one
yeah,
last
go
question.
for it.
Can we
We have to
have
get
one
off.
last question? Okay.
One quick question, and then I think the lights have come up. So we
too
should...
bad.
We're busted.
Okay.
We are so busted.
I make it very short. So my name is Francisca and used to work for or run an accelerator in the Futurepreneur. Is it already up?
We have 40 seconds.
You're good.
40 seconds.
Come on,
Yeah,
come on, ahead.
Okay, so we always struggled with diversity of founders, so that's why we, in that accelerator was running for Switzerland out of San Francisco, and that's where we also started Futurepreneur programs. But I learned that a big problem, like as you said, Dave, is the investor community. And so you just mentioned you're just two male partners, and I know you do a lot of initiatives, but I was wondering, like, A, are you trying to change that in your own company? And B, what are the interesting initiatives that you see, how to increase diversity, let's say gender in general, in the VC community?
Yeah, so I'll be very quick because we're out of time. But yes, we are. I mean, we're looking. We're a very small team. We're looking to hire a third person. Like what almost top of the criteria for that third person is like, how do we increase the diversity? Because myself and my partner, we're also very similar backgrounds, right? So whether that's gender diversity or other diversity, so that's really important. I do also see a lot of initiatives from elsewhere in the industry, and just things like we're connecting now more to kind of more female angel investors who are our co-investors, and we're thinking about the diversity within our co-investment group. So I'll leave it there, but I can come and speak more directly to that afterwards.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Brilliant. Okay, thank you for listening. Sorry for running over time at
Thank you,
AWE,
Dave.
but thank you AWE for putting these topics on the main stage, and also for getting these issues sorted with the speaker ratio that you have. So thank you.
Thank you.